He's fine, dear. He's still very tired and needs to take it slow. He wanted to thank you for visiting with him before. He said he remembers looking up and seeing you and was grateful for you taking out the time to visit with and pray for him. We're both very glad that you could come here tonight. Sorry for the lateness of the hour, and we hope we didn't interrupt your evening. Oh no, we're glad to be here. The whole church has been praying for your son, and we are so grateful to God that he is awake and mending. Thank you, answered Paul's mother as she looked over at her son, who had turned his face toward the window. She knew he was hurting and decided to end the visit for fear their prolonged presence would push her son back into the depressed state of pity and denial that would hinder his recovery. I hope I don't sound ungrateful because I really do appreciate you both for stopping by this evening, but I think it would be best if Paul got some rest now. You do understand, don't you? Oh, of course, answered Will as he cupped Denise's elbow and gently ushered her towards the door. I'll be back tomorrow, if that's all right, Minister Haynes, Denise asked as she slowly backed away from the bed, her eyes glued to his face. He turned away from the window for a brief moment and locked eyes with Denise just as she was about to turn and head out the door. Will you come alone? Yes, if you want me to. I do. Then I will. Thank you, he said, and for the first time since she had walked into the room, he smiled. Not a word did either of them utter until they were both buckled into their seats. I don't know what to say. I shouldn't have been there. It's quite obvious that Paul was not happy to see you and I together. I just hope I haven't caused any problems for you. Are you serious? What problem could you have caused for me? We are representatives for Pastor Hollis, and Paul has nothing to do with us being together. Denise, we had a spectacular evening, and I want it to end that way. I don't know what that scene at the hospital was all about, but I'm sure you'll find out all about it tomorrow. Although I could tell you now that your friend Minister Hayes has a gigantic crush on you and was not happy, to say the least, when I showed up with you this evening. You have got to be kidding me. A crush on me? You can't be serious. You didn't see the shriveling look he gave me? This can't be happening. Oh, it's happening. I'm sorry, Minister Hayes, and I pray for your continued speedy recovery. But it is going to be me and Mrs. Jones, he said with a smile that caused her heart to skip a beat and a wink that made her blush again. No, you did not just say that. Said it and meant it, my lady. Minister Hayes isn't the only one with a big old crush on Sister Jones. And now that my hat is in the ring, I might as well let you know that I'm playing for keeps. Denise's heart was beating so fast, she was afraid she was about to faint. She kept her eyes on the road and kept her hands folded tightly in her lap as Will pulled the car out of the parking spot and headed towards her house. Did you hear what I just said? Asked Will in a quiet voice. Yes, Will, I heard you. No comment? No comment. Good, he said, with a deep sigh that spoke volumes. Standing at her front door, Denise did not even entertain the thought of should she ask Will to come inside for coffee. The lateness of the hour answered that question. But that just left the other thing, the big thing, the should I just shake her hand or give her a kiss thing. Will's mind was in a whirl. He was nothing if he was not a gentleman, and he knew the proper etiquette for a first date. And coupled with the fact that he was not some horny, bumbling teenager, he knew he had plenty of time to kiss Denise. So it was of no consequence if he did not kiss her on their first date. So you could have knocked him over with a feather when Denise reached over to him and kissed him gently on the lips before he could even reach out his hand. Well, I had the most wonderful evening. So did I. Thanks for accompanying me to the hospital. Think nothing of it. I was honored to be with you. Well, it's late. Yes. Good night, Denise. Good night, Will. She listened for the sound of Will's car driving away, and then she turned and walked into the dining room and almost screamed when the sight of her eldest child caught her off guard. What are you doing up and sitting in the dark? You almost gave me a heart attack, she asked with mock anger and genuine shock. You missed your curfew, young lady. You have some explaining to do, answered Matt with a smile as he rose and hugged his mother. Did you have a nice time? I had a wonderful time, sweetie, and thanks for waiting up. I'm home now, so you can head off to bed. How was the minister? Oh, right. Well, he's awake, and I'm not sure how he's doing. We'll go back tomorrow to check on him. His mother's with him. Okay. Good night, Mom. Good night. It had been a whole week since her date with Will, and Denise was still reliving moments of that wonderful evening. She couldn't believe she had almost forgotten how nice it felt to have a man interested in her. She had purposely cut men from her life and made her children her universe. But now she felt like standing on top of Mount Everest and shouting into a bullhorn for all the world to hear. I'm back. Will called her every day during his lunch hour, and she found herself checking her watch and making sure she was free to receive his call. They didn't talk long, but the sound of his voice was so soothing and confident that she almost felt like a schoolgirl again. She had to sit down with her children and asked them to be honest with her about her dating a teacher from their school. Net was the only one that seemed a smidge indifferent, but Denise was not too surprised. She was the baby, and anything that threatened to take Denise's attention from her made her a little cranky. The week had gone by with no major catastrophes in the kids department, and for that, Denise was grateful. Will had sat with them at Friday night Bible study, making Denise feel both elated and very conspicuous, and again walked them to their car. He asked if she would again like to accompany him to dinner, but this time she refused. Can I get a rain check for maybe next weekend? I decided to take the kids out this weekend. You know how kids are. Just want to reassure them that they are still very important and don't have to feel threatened. I understand perfectly, and I agree 100%. You are a very wise woman, Denise Jones, and your rain check is good for next weekend. So, shall we say we have a second date lockdown? We have a second date lockdown, Coach, she answered with a tender smile as she gently squeezed his arm. So where are you and the kids going, if you don't mind my asking? Oh, it's no place fancy. We're just going to dinner at this diner that the kids and their father and I used to go to, and then there's this carnival they just put up in Queens that I thought the kids would like. Oh, yeah, I saw that place. It looks like you guys are going to have a great time. I know this is kind of last minute, and I have to admit, I didn't think about it before, but would you like to come with us? As nice as it all sounds, I think it would be better if you and the kids have that day all to yourselves. I can come on the next one if you still want me. Thanks for understanding, Will, and I'm sure I'll still want you. Good night, Will. Good night, Denise. And you all get home safely, and I will see you all Sunday morning. As Denise got into her car and she and the kids all waved goodnight to Will, no one noticed the man that was standing close to Will with his back to them all. Gavin could not remember when he had been so angry. Not only was the woman he was supposed to marry going on dates with this despicable creature, but they were sitting together in church like they were husband and wife. All through the service, Gavin was expecting the pastor to reprimand them and order Will to move to another seat and stop making a spectacle of himself. He looked at the kids and he could tell that they were embarrassed by this white man trying to infiltrate their family. And he heard with his own ears that they were planning to go out again next weekend. Well, that was the last straw. It was time for action, and tomorrow night would be the night that he, Gavin, would be able to prove himself to be a hero and make Denise Jones fall in love with him, and that would be the end of this business with William Banyan. Mimi and Chrissy were beside themselves with excitement as they dressed to get ready for the evening their Aunt Nisi had planned for them. She was always taking them places and doing family outings with them, but this one was special because they hadn't been to a carnival since their mother had taken them years ago. Jay was excited too, but of course he wouldn't let them know. If they saw he had a weakness, it would give them power to hurt him, take away the things he loved and wanted, play with his emotions. Well, that would never happen again. He'd take his money and use it all up, but he wasn't about to let her see him enjoying it. Not a smile would crack his face, not one. Matt and Vet were kind of excited about it too, and they didn't care if anyone thought they were acting like kids. They both loved the carnival and were daring each other to get on the largest, fastest rides that were exhibited. Usually, Net was the one to dare and follow through, but she had been kind of standoffish lately, and they had both decided not to let her blue funk spoil their evening. The three eldest children all knew this evening was their mother's way of proving to them that her interest in Coach Banyan was in no way an indication that her love for them would be diminished. Vet and Matt decided that they were going to do everything in their power to make sure all of their mother's plans turned out just the way she wanted them to. Deciding to take the higher road and be the bigger person, not even decided to try to reach out to Jay, hoping that it would make him warm up, relax, except that he was a part of the family and just have fun. But it didn't work because they kept walking around with that I don't care what anybody says, I'm just going to be me attitude, so he decided to just leave him alone. Matt even tried reaching out to Jay, hoping he would drop his I don't care about anybody but me attitude and stop trying to act like everybody hated him. At the carnival, Denise was so glad she decided to bring the kids to the carnival. She could tell everyone was really having a great time, and she had to admit even she was enjoying herself, which wasn't a surprise because she loved having fun with the kids, and the carnival was also one of her favorite places. She was elated to see Mimi smiling and so happy. And she was so proud of Vet for taking Chrissy and Mimi under her wing, making sure they were having fun. It didn't escape her. Matt was trying to reach out to Jay, but kept running into a brick wall. She started to say something, but decided to just leave it and let them work it out on their own. Sooner or later, that wall would come down. She knew it. She was praying too hard. The only thing about the evening that was puzzling to her was Net's behavior. She was not being her usual let her your hair down self, but Denise decided to leave that alone too. She was beginning to accept the fact that she could not solve every single situation that would arise with her children. She would literally go mad if she kept trying. She resolved herself to just being there for them and just praying because, after all, God handles things better than she can. As the evening wore on, Denise began to think of a place she could take the kids to eat. Even though they had been eating junk since they got to the carnival, she still wanted them all to sit down and have a meal together. To her, it always solidified family time. Besides church, it was probably one of the most important rituals family they shared. They had made their way around the carnival and was approaching the large roller coaster. Denise could hear the girls already declaring that they would never get on such a giant monster. And of course, Matt was boasting and bragging that it would be no match for him since he, being the only man in the house, before the other kids came, of course, was the only one who would get on the roller coasters whenever Denise and the three of them went out. And then, to her surprise, Jay jumped in and attempted to downplay Matt's boasting. They each began naming the different locations they had visited on previous occasions and how the roller coasters always left them somewhat disappointed. Denise knew exactly where this was headed and stepped back and watched as a bond began to be formed as the boys began challenging each other. She looked at Vet, who looked back at her and winked and waited patiently for Matt to reach his hands out for the tickets for he and Jay to join the line. Just as the boys got on the end of the line, Chrissy announced that she needed to use the bathroom. Of course she did, thought Net to herself in annoyance. She always needs something at the wrong time. Little kids can be such a pain. Denise extended her hand so Chrissy could take it so she could take her to the bathroom. Then guilt washed over Net for feeling jealousy over a child who was completely innocent of any wrongdoing. It was not Christy's fault that her life was so screwed up and that she had to be passed around from one family member to the next. She was just a little girl after all. And then she told herself to get a grip. "I'll take her to the bathroom," she told her mom, and she reached out her hand to little Chrissy. With the look of surprise on her face, Denise said, "Okay, thank you, sweetie," and smiled at her daughter with gratitude in her heart because she knew that it was God. She turned her attention back to the roller coaster in time to see the boys climbing into the next to last seat in the cars. This was going to be fun. They both had determined looks on their faces, each wanting to prove that they were the most fearless in the family. Walking towards the bathroom, Net looked at Chrissy and wondered how she would feel if she were in her shoes. She couldn't imagine how she would feel if her mother was not there to protect her and her siblings. Her mother was a rock, always there for her family and anyone else that she knew needed help. Net promised herself that from now on, she would be just like her mother. She had so much to be thankful for, and here she was being jealous of a little girl. "Are you enjoying yourself?" she asked Chrissy. I'm having the best time ever, she answered with pure delight. Good. Here we are, said Net as they reached the ladies' bathroom. Glancing back, she saw her mother and Vet looking up and pointing at what had to be the boys, and she hoped Chrissy wouldn't take long in the bathroom because she didn't want to miss when the boys got off the ride. She stood outside of the stall as Chrissy went inside and locked the door. Wash your hands when you finish. I'll be standing right outside the door, Net told her as she heard her peeing and walking towards the entrance. Okay, answered Chrissy. She was glad that Net was acting more friendly towards her. She was finally beginning to feel like she was a part of the family, and she couldn't wait to get back to the rides. She still had not gone on the carousel. She finished peeing, wiped herself with the tissue on the roll, and pulled up her clothes. She opened the door to the stall and walked over to the sink and began washing her hands. Just then, a lady walked into the bathroom and headed to the stall she had just come out of. Suddenly, she smelled a sharp, stinging odor, and everything went dark.